Sanjay, and Sanjay actually brought his own tech support all the way from home. All right. Sanjay is a good friend of mine, and we were talking about this, and Sanjay has been actually doing lots of training over the last year or two, actually, or even 3.
7 years.
7 years. Oh my goodness, time flies to be having fun.
Time flies, right?
And we talked about it, and really one area that we thought that he could share is actually about stakeholder management, right? So this is what Sanjay is sharing today. I'll give a little hint on who is coming next week because it's already set up. So I have a lot of good stuff in Sanjay's, right up in the email to Sanjay, so I wouldn't say too much, but he has been in the IT industry for almost 30 years. Yeah? Right? Years, yeah. So in the last 7 years, he's been actually helping the IT professionals in terms of in the leadership training. Right? So without further ado, I give it to Sanjay to you.
Thanks, Chuck. Good. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. So when Chuck was asking me for a long time to do a talk here, and I just couldn't figure out what to do here, right? Thinking about, because it's all about technology, startups, and things like that. So what can I really do about it? So one of the things I thought about is what is the common problem we all have, right? Whether we are a startup or whether we are an MNC or stuff, right? And one of the key things is around people management, right? People management, you have to make, if you have a 2-man show also, you have to manage people, and if you have a 100,000 strong company also, you have to manage people, right? So I just do a quick background myself. My company is named Aetherplus, and it's been about 7 years. I left the IT industry in 2009, right? I left the IT industry in 2009 and thought of a lot of different things what I wanted to do, but somehow I landed up in learning and development. Right? A lot of feedback from my friends and colleagues said, Sanjay, why don't you do this? Because you've been in management for so long. It's good maybe you go out and do some training and coaching. Right? So I started out experimenting, and in 2010 I started my company. So it's been about 7 years as an entrepreneur, facilitator, and a coach. Okay? And I worked in Singapore and the USA as well. I spent 10 years in the US, but I'm a Singaporean by birth, and I came back here and settled down here, right? So as you said, I'm in IT industry, 20 years in the IT industry. 10 of those I was in Microsoft. Okay, so Microsoft both in the US for about 2 years in Dallas, Texas, and then the rest of the time in Singapore. Okay? My focus a lot was around enterprise support and consulting. So more of the delivery side of things that we were doing, not so much the product side, more the services side. Okay? And then what I do now, this is what I actually do now. I facilitate programs in a few areas, right? And leadership, management change, and all of this comes from experience. Basically, it's not something that you learn from books, but basically what we've done in the past. Okay? I'm also an executive coach, and I also administer things like psychometric tools like MBTI and emergenetics and those kind of tools. And we can talk a lot more about it if you have any questions around those things. I'm not going to waste so much time. But this is about Aetherplus. Like, you can go to my website and look at it. Right? My importance is about learning, right? And also through innovation and excellence. Okay? So a few things about us. Basically, is that we are very strengths-based approach. Right? So strengths-based approach using neuroscience techniques, because neuroscience is a fledgling science now. And what happens is that we are learning a lot more about the brain, how it works, and how people behave. So I got fond of neuroscience very quickly, very early, even in Microsoft days. And I got certified under a group called Neuro Leadership Group as a coach. And also have done a certificate course there in neuroscience to understand how people behave. Right? And a lot of it is actually biological, right? Very biological in nature. Right? Not that people want to behave, they just behave that way. Okay? And we use a combination of different types of tools. So learning is not just about training. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that when you say learning, training, right? No, I think most of the learning happens on the job. Most of the learning happens in your meeting rooms, right? In your discussions, and that's what's important. So it's not just about training. We use different types of tools. We facilitate, we coach. We do action learning, games, activities. We do many different ways because we want to get the optimal out of it. Right. And finally is that I don't try to do everything, right? Because right now I have only myself and 2 more employees, that's it. So we kind of like have a network of trainers. So I have a lot of associates who do different areas like sales, maybe finance, things like that. So I try not to boil the ocean by doing it all myself. Right? So this is a bit about my company. So these are the areas that we focus on, and particularly our focus is all around the business, right? Whether it's MNCs, SMEs, or startups, right? Leadership issues you have to look at. Change is a big thing, right? Disruptive change. Today, after today's US election, another big change, right? Coming across, we don't know what's going to happen there, right? Innovation is another big key, and project management. These are some of the key things that most businesses ask me to kind of come and work with them on. Right? These are just memberships and all the certifications that we do. I just flip through very quickly. These are my customers. Some of my customers work. Multi-cross industry. I'm not that. Interestingly, I've done very little work in IT after leaving. Right? So I've done a lot of work in manufacturing, finance, banks, including healthcare, even social service as well. But the question is, this is all about soft skills anyway, right? It's all about leadership and management skills as a whole. And as I said, I work with a lot of different partners, right? Whether some partners are from US, some partners are from Netherlands. I also have partners in Singapore as well. We work together to deliver programs. So that's a little bit about me. Any questions before I start? So I thought I did give a little snippet of a workshop that we would do. Right? And I said, what would be something that people would like to do? And I think this is something that everybody probably has a problem with. It's your stakeholders. Right? So whether you're running a project, whether you're running a new venture, whether you're running a big company strategy, whatever you may be doing, a lot of times you have to work with people. Right? So one of the things we do in a lot of the workshop is, and I try to do, is understand who the stakeholder is. Right? Who's the stakeholder? So I'll give you a slick run through. I won't do the whole part of the workshop here. But when you're identifying a stakeholder, one of the key things to understand is, why is the stakeholder important to you? Or why is the stakeholder interested in what you're doing? Okay? So there are these 5 boxes here, right? And as you know, we shift from Surface to Apple, so everything is shifted a bit. Okay? The impact, wherever you're doing, what's the impact to your company? What can the stakeholder do to your company? Can he grow your company? Can he stop your company from working? What can he do? The impact that he gets. It could be success or failure. Somebody might be looking towards your failure, right? Because he wants to further his own agenda, right? And I can share with you some of the stories that I have faced in the past as well, right? They gain something, right? Whether it's money, whether it's prestige, whatever. They gain something, whether from, and you see both sides, success and failure, right? Because success, yes. But some people are not supporters, some people are resistors. So they are looking for you to fail as well. People are affected. You implement a new system, you implement a new thing. Who's affected by it? Right? So these are people who are affected by the outcomes of the project. Okay. Probably in venture, I think this is one of the stakeholders, key people like this, your investors. Right? So investors, who's invested resources and who's invested funding. Right? These are the key stakeholders. All you're accountable for it in one way or another. Goals, your objectives, based on what you want to achieve is also there. So it's a good thing to understand is who are your stakeholders. So in a regular workshop, what we do is we ask them to sit down and brainstorm in a group and say, who are your stakeholders, right? And we give them these 5 little boxes here and say, think of it in these terms and try to identify who they are. So I give out post-it notes, everyone writes one stakeholder per post-it note, right? And they collect quite a lot. At first they think about 2 or 3. Then when they finally think about it, right, they realize that there are just many, many more. Okay? Right? I work with some of you as well, right? And sometimes we ignore some of the stakeholders. Our team members are also stakeholders. Right? Sometimes when we are starting up, our family support is very important. Family is also a stakeholder, right? Okay? As I work with some of you, I've done some coaching for some of you, some consulting work. We've realized that, all of a sudden we think, hey, you know what, we never thought about family, because I need to spend the family time as well. Right? How does it affect the family time? How does it do that? So these impact the way you do things. Okay? And the thing you have to always understand, do you understand the WIFM? You know what this acronym means? Yeah? You should know. What's in it for me? Right? So everybody has this thing. Everybody has a WIFM is what we say. What's in it for me? Right? Why do I do this? Why should I support you? Why should I give you funds? Right? Okay? So everyone has a WIFM. Right? And you have to understand the WIFM. And if you don't understand the WIFM, you will have a much harder time controlling your stakeholders. Okay? So why do we do? Then what we do here is we do what we call a stakeholder analysis. Okay? And the reason for doing stakeholder analysis is really to preempt a lot of the issues or problems that you may face down the road. You want to preempt. So you do this very onset of any kind of a project or a venture or anything you're starting. Who are the people who are we going to work with, right? And how are they going to support us? How are they going to resist us? Are there neutrals in there? What are we going to do with them? Okay? So there are 4 things, right, that we want to look at. Number 1 is the earlier we communicate with our stakeholders, right, you can use their opinions of your powerful stakeholders to shape your venture, shape your project. Okay? Now, why do we want to do this? Any idea? Why do we want their influence? If they have ideas and you implement it into your project, why do you think that's good? Anybody? Experience, right? So if I have if Joe has a project here, right, and I give Joe an idea, Joe implements it, would I likely support it or oppose it? I'll support it, right? Because my idea is inside. If my idea is not inside, maybe I will resist it, right? But the moment I have one part of it, I don't want his venture to fail because my idea is there. See how psychology works, right? Whether it's money or not, but still it's my idea. So my idea is implementing. So I will help Joe, right, to do that. Okay. You want to gain support from them. Obviously, resources are very important, right? When you start, whether it's funding, whether it's people, expertise, you want to get the support there. Okay. And then communication, right? The more you communicate with them, the more they fully understand the project. So they don't come up with all kinds of funny ideas about your project and what you want to do and all that stuff. The more you communicate with them, the more they understand, and then the more they will interact with you. Okay? Now the last one is anticipation. So a lot of times when you tell somebody an idea, you can easily read from the body language. You know, they get scared about something. So you can anticipate people's reaction. Are people happy with what you're doing? Are people not happy with it? Right? Are people going to oppose? What are they going to do? So these are the 4 kind of things that we look at. Okay? Any questions so far? So we there are many ways to actually do that. There are many ways to actually do stakeholder analysis. The simplest way is what we call a power interest grid. How much power does a stakeholder has as opposed to how much interest do they have, right? So we come up with this matrix because, as I said, when you sit down and think about your stakeholders, there's a lot already. How are you going to manage all these different stakeholders, right? So as trainers and facilitators, we like to make it a bit simpler. We put it into a grid, right? We put it into 4 grids, so it makes it easier to group the people and to work with them. Okay? So with that, depending on the power level and the interest level, there are different strategies for each one, right? Different types of strategies. Now this is very simple. There are much more complex ways of doing it, right? But this is the very simple. And most of the time, most projects, we do this very simply. Okay? So these are the different strategies that we work with. Right? If you have the low power, low interest people, this is one strategy, which is monitor them. Right? If they are high interest and low power, you keep them informed. High power and low interest, keep them satisfied. And these are the ones that high power and interest. Now, what does power mean? Right? So when you have power, what comes to mind? Power all of them. Control, right? Is it hierarchical control? Management control? Not necessarily. What other kinds of power do you know? Financial power, yes. Right? Influence, yes, you have influence, right? Okay. If the CEO's son-in-law is working with you, right? Is he an influential person? Possible, right? Possible, right? So we call it relationship power, right? You know somebody somewhere. So you have relationship power, knowledge, right? Technological expertise, right? There are all kinds of power, right? It's not just money. Most of the time people will think of money and they think about hierarchical, right? He's my boss, right? That's it. But there are other types of power as well that you need. And when you think about organizations or projects and things like that, what is it you really need for it? You need to understand who has the power and you need to bring that person on board. Okay? So that's what we're looking at. Interest means that, hey, the guy is into your project, understands what he's doing, right? But there are some people who may not be ultimately interested in your project. Okay? They may not be very, very interested in your project. Okay? They may want to say, try to cut you short, do something with it, so it will make it into a problem, right? So they may do that. So the first grade is that we kind of do it fun, but obviously you don't want to tell people that you're doing this, right? I use animals as a kind of a mascot for each one, right? A mascot for each one, right? So if it's a low power, low interest animal, what would you call? What would that be? Huh? A sloth, yes. Anybody else? Low power, low interest animal? Snail, okay. Right? Okay, so you can come up with your own that one, right? But what we do here is we use a funny little teddy bear here, right? Okay. Now these are your low power, low interest, your masses most of the time, right? People who are affected but not so affected, they're not that interested, right? They will do whatever they want. But you want to monitor this group of people. Because this group of people may one day get promoted, right? One day may come into a lot of money, okay? Right? One day may come into a lot of knowledge. So you want to monitor these people, right? Where they're going. But for now, you want to keep them at bay because these are the majority of people. Okay? The second group of people, okay, second group of people over there, okay, right, are your high interest and your low power. Okay? What would you use? High interest. A highly interested person would do what? Yeah, maybe do a lot of activity, right? Talk a lot about it, okay, right? So these we call them our monkeys, right? Why monkeys? Monkeys chatter a lot. So if you don't control these people, right? They will chatter the wrong things. They will say the wrong things. If you don't communicate with them, that's why we put the strategies, keep them informed. If you don't keep your evangelists informed, what happens? Somebody else says, hey, you know what Vinod is doing, what Joe is doing is not very nice. Right? In fact, your product may be very great, but then somebody is giving bad views about it, right? So you must make sure you keep this group informed because they are the ones that will evangelize. Right? You know, a bunch of monkeys get together in a chatter, it's very loud, right? Very, very loud, right? So everybody can hear what's happening, right? So these are probably your evangelists. So make sure you don't neglect them. Make sure you're communicating with them. Make sure you're telling them the features. Make sure you're telling them what the benefits are so that they go out and do the same thing. Okay? They go out and do the same thing. The third one, high power and low interest. Or maybe no interest. Or interest in something else. What kind of person would that be? What kind of animal, rather? I think you identify with this one. Asian crowd identifies with this. I thought so, right? You didn't say it, right? Yeah. So these are the snakes, right? So your snakes are the ones you keep satisfied, right? And I don't know how many of you. I think a lot of you have been in corporate life before. How many snakes have you faced in corporate life? Plenty, right? Huh? Double-headed ones also, right? Okay. Yeah, I know. There's a video that's going viral on Facebook right now, right? The little iguana running away from a bunch of snakes, and he escapes, right? He's being attacked all over the place, you know. So it's just like that. And sometimes corporate life is like that. You are trying to run something, and all these snakes are coming against you, right? So it's important to think about it. Now, I have some personal stories, right? Back when I was in corporate life as well, I was running a regional project, right, for all of Asia. We were centralizing our operations in Singapore. And it was going quite okay, but there were a lot of people who resist. Remember, change is hard for people. Neuroscience has shown that change is very hard, okay, because people are set in their mindset. So people will resist, okay. But I had a new stakeholder come in midway through the project, and he was at the next level, my boss's level. And when he came in, and he was a new guy, came in from another company, and he saw this project, and I didn't involve him a lot. I just kept him on side because I said, look, he doesn't know anything, so why do I want to manage him? So this was my mistake. I should have managed him from the beginning. He started getting in my way. Right? Started saying bad things about the project, telling my boss's boss different things, right? Started randomizing me, right? Because he's, again, my one senior level, right? So he asked me for reports, He started randomizing me a lot, and he was just giving me so much. And every time in a meeting, he would be the biggest naysayer. So I said, what's wrong with this guy, right? Well, he doesn't know anything, he doesn't want to contribute anything, but he still wants to get involved. So I had a chat with my boss, and my boss says, you watch out for this guy. Right? We don't know much about him, so make sure you keep him satisfied. So I started to understand what he wanted. So the only thing, after a few sessions with him, I understood he wanted limelight. So what I would do is, any high-level meeting that I have to attend, I would bring my contingent, right? So I would invite him. I would go and say, can you please join us and give your support? Because I need to get approval from the GM for the operations center.
So would you like? He said, yeah, who's going to be there? So I said, yeah, there'll be GM, there'll be senior directors. Yeah, I'll definitely be there. And he'll come into the room, he'll walk into the room and he'll say, hey, Sanjay, tell me who these people are. So I point. And he'll go and plop himself down next to the highest ranking guy. Right? And then introduce himself and get going. Then all the criticism he did there, when I'm presenting, and I asked him, can you interject some of the issues we are working on? He said, no, we don't have any issues in front of the customer, in front of the other stakeholder. We don't have any issues. I think we're doing fine, everything's okay. So total different behavior in front of them, in front of them. So I realized, how do I keep him satisfied? I need to keep him as part of my team, whether I like it or not. Okay? So he was part of the team, he was part of the leadership team. But he hardly did anything. I kept him satisfied. Call him for meetings, call him for that. So I tried to test him also and said, we're going to have a project war room meeting, and I want you to come in and give your suggestions and things. And it's like, how long is it going to be? I said, yeah, it's brainstorming, so we may be around for 2 hours. Okay? So he says, who's coming there? So that was a big question for me. I said, well, nobody. I'm the highest ranking manager in the room. So he said, hey, Sanjay, you're doing a good job. I don't think you need anything from me. So I'll sit this one out. Okay? So then I realized this guy only wants to be part of the other meeting. A second stakeholder was the GM for the operations center. Twice I went in to present my plan. Twice I got thrown out. Right? And I just couldn't. He will find some fault. I'll fix it, I'll go back, he'll find some fault. Because I realized that he didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to take over the whole thing. So I was struggling with that whole thing. Okay? So he's another snake, right? He's not interested, and he's just pushing me back. But he pushed me back out twice, and I said the third time I cannot have that happen. But I didn't have a good way of doing things. So that will segue into the next quadrant there, and I'll tell you the story about how that got solved. Okay, who is the last animal you think? High power, high interest. Who's the tiger? Lion or tiger? So it's our tiger. Right? So your tigers you manage closely. Find all the tigers you have. Because the tigers are very, very useful to your project. Okay? So who was my tiger in the project? It was my boss. Okay? And my boss wasn't that strong a tiger. Because we still got thrown out by the GM twice. And then he used to report to the GM many years ago. So I said, use your influence use your influence, try to convince him. He couldn't. Okay? But halfway through that project, this project lasted almost 3 years. Right? Halfway through the project, my boss resigned. So I was left rudderless, right? Struggling in the waves for a long time, trying to get things done. Okay? So one day, out of the blue, I think luck stroke came. My boss's boss, senior vice president, came back from the US, and he was chewed out by his boss. And he called an emergency meeting, and he says, I have to solve this problem in compliance, in finance, and all that stuff. What are we doing? Everybody comes up, gives up some suggestions, and I said, hey, let everyone say their piece first. So everyone finished their piece, and I said, can I share with you a project that I'm working on? Then he said, yeah, sure. So I bring out my slides, I show him the project. Then he says, hey, look, looks like this is a good project. I think you will help us to solve the problem. But I noticed your timeline, you are so far behind. What's happening? So I said, I have a lot of resistors because I'm having this problem. So he said, what kind of problem? So I told him about the GM and Ops Center. Ops Center is not willing to take on the thing. And he says, but the problems we see is minor. Why does he stop? I said, twice I presented, twice I went thrown out. So he said, okay, do me one favor, can you send me all the slides? I will go and talk to him. Then I said, why are you going to talk to him? He said, you leave that to me, I'm going to check with him. And what he did was, the following week he said, I'm going to have dinner with him. He went and had dinner with him. He came back the next week, and he told me, okay, go schedule a final presentation. Then I said, well, he's going to do the same thing. He said, he won't. He said, trust me, he won't. So I went in there and brought my snake along also. Because the snake must be there. So the snake he was the VP for sales, he needed to be there. So I brought him along as well. And we walked in there, the next stakeholder, GM, walked in the room smiling. Normally he has a scowl, like this, very scowling, never shakes anybody's hands. That day he walked in, he saw me, he smiled at me, and he came and shook my hand. That was when I freaked out totally. I said, why is he behaving like this? So throughout the presentation, he's nodding his head, he's smiling, which was very different. And I didn't fix any great thing after the second presentation, right? And he said, yes, this is a good project, we need to go ahead with it, because it is in line with what the corporate wants, right? And we want to do that, okay? He turns around to his team and says, you know, this is a very important project. I want you to give 100% support to Sanjay to make sure it's successful. And I go, what happened here? Right? And they walked out. In fact, the team was asked me after that, what did you do to my boss? I said, I didn't do anything. I don't know who did what, and I just kept it away. So how important tigers are, because at your level, you probably cannot influence higher up very hard. You need to have the tigers to influence those things, right, to do that. Okay. So similarly, I had a lot of resistance from the subsidiaries, and this guy became a tiger because he was so interested in the project after that. He said, give me an update every week. Let's have a 5-minute session, have a coffee. So he was saying, where are you stuck? What's happening with you? I said, well, this thing's happening and I'm stuck here. So I told him I'm stuck with the subsidiaries. China is not cooperating, India is not cooperating, a few people are not cooperating. They are coming back with a lot of issues. I said, okay, leave that to me, I will settle that. So wherever I had resistance, he went and settled it. Like dominoes started to fall. I was like struggling with it, but dominoes started to fall. And when those dominoes fell, right, everything was there. Then we went into phase 1, we had a very successful phase 1. Okay. So after that, I became such a believer of stakeholder management, understanding who the stakeholder, or who can influence it. So these are some of my actual issues that I faced. Okay. So that's why we call this a tiger map. Okay. We call this a tiger map. Who are your tigers? Understand your tigers, right? And utilize them to the best of your ability. Now remember one thing, right? Remember you have a lot of stakeholders, there's always going to be conflict among the stakeholders, right? Different stakeholders will want different things. And you may have all the stakeholders, your customers, your vendors, your VCs, right? Your team members also. Your team members are stakeholders, right? The people, the vendors, your contractors you hire, they're all your stakeholders. How can they delay your project? But the most important thing is they will have some conflict. These are just some examples. Some people may be concerned about quality of the product. Some people may be concerned about how much money you're spending. Some people may be concerned about how fast you're going to do things, right? Or other things, right? Other things, what kind of features the product is going to have, right? So you have all this conflict, and all these conflicts need to be managed. Okay? So you need to understand that how to manage those conflicts between the different stakeholders. Who are your tigers, right? Right? Your tigers, obviously, you want to make sure your tigers are pushing for you and helping you. So work with your tigers as far as you can. Okay? Now, when it comes to stakeholders, again, you will always have your supporters, you always have your resistors, but you also have the middle part, the neutrals. And you also have the die-hard resistors who you do whatever you do, they will still not change. Then you have the early adopters. Right? These people are the ones that push you. So in your case, you need to understand who those people are. Use your early adopters, right? Well, use your supporters well. But never neglect the middle, because the middle is like a bell curve, you know. It's like a bell curve. Your neutrals are probably the highest number. Okay? Right? So today, as you can see, the US elections, the neutrals are going to flip either side. The diehards are never going to change. Right? The Republicans are Republicans, Democrats. But the swing states, those who change every election, right? These are the people. So what is your strategy for that? Okay, think about your strategy for that. Because if you don't move your neutrals over to this side, they will go over to that side. They will eventually go over to that side. So managing your neutrals is a key thing, right? So what do you do? These are just some strategies to think about. Okay? Communication, finding common interests, right? But make sure that they don't assume that they will always follow, right? Okay? Make sure you communicate to them. These are your monkeys. Make sure you communicate to them, because if you don't communicate to them, they will just follow whoever talks about it. Okay? Right? So these are just some things that we do. Right? Now for opponents, obviously, don't ignore them, don't dismiss them completely. Okay? Because sometimes you'll find that they may oppose one part of your venture, but they are not totally opposed to your whole venture. Right? So manage them, work with them. Because we always assume, oh, he's opposed to this part of it, then he's opposed to everything. And most of the time it's not. They just want that part to be fixed. Right? So think about some of these things. Right? Acknowledge if there are problems, acknowledge them. Right? There are problems, right? But that's what we are here for. We want to solve them. And get them to talk about their opinions. Right? Of course, your supporters, don't neglect them also. Right? Because the supporters are the ones, make sure they're involved, empower them, get them involved, give them roles and ownership. Yeah, work with them. Right? Don't dismiss them, okay? But also don't think they will lead the effort for you. You will have to lead the effort yourself. They will just be your strong supporters, right? But you have to manage them. Okay? These are just some tips of do's and don'ts when it comes to stakeholder strategy. So all we do is we come up with a stakeholder plan, right? How to manage them, right? So we kind of look at how to we call a stakeholder management register. Right? We look at that and say, what's the stakeholder? Why is he interested in my venture? And what's his possible negative or positive effect of the venture that we're doing? Right? Okay? How can he help my venture? How can he derail my venture? Right? And then think about management strategies. Right? How are you going to manage them? Communicate with them regularly, have meetings with them, town hall, what do you need to do, right? How often do you need to do these sort of things? Right? Understand the frequency, understand how you're going to communicate, right? So I'm not going to go into communications planning, but how you communicate to them, through email, face-to-face, what do you need to do, right? Like my tiger, for instance, I have a face-to-face meeting with him every week. If he's traveling, it's a phone call. There's no email there. We won't do email, because I know he has no time to read email. But he's very quick. He needs a 2-minute elevator pitch from me. Say, hey, walk me down and tell me what's happening with the project. And in 2 minutes, I have to tell him, get a decision from him, and walk back up. Right? So he, at that level, finance will want a lot of numbers and all that stuff. So what you give them, right? Think about it, right? So what are the strategies? How you communicate to them? What medium you use? I think that's all very important. Okay, that's how I've been running a lot of ventures, projects, strategies over the few years, right? And in this stakeholder management, it's useful for companies, useful for strategy, useful for projects. Anything that you do which involves people, right? You probably need to have at the initial stage think about a little bit about this. So that's a little bit about my experience in this area, right? And ultimately, it's all about people management. Okay. So I did this very quickly. This workshop this whole section lasts about an hour, right? Because we do a lot of workshops, we do flip charts, we do post-it notes. They actually come up with a stakeholder management strategy by the end of the workshop. So then they know what to do, right? After that, it's just execute it.
Sanjay,
yes.
What about new stakeholders? I mean, like for example, right now, in social network, your followers should also be your stakeholders, right?
Yes.
So how do you manage those people? Because it is people that you don't really know, they're just following you, right?
Right.
So what are different things, Because I find that in the old days, when we talk about a particular topic, right, the topic are quite, divided into all these areas. But with the new technology coming in, right, you're getting new stuff which, you can hardly manage your old, right?
Yes. And
now you're going to start thinking about, a new stakeholder called followers.
Yes.
Right. So how do you develop, a strategy like that? Because understanding the stakeholders will be your key point of really developing a strategy.
Yes, exactly.
So how do you look at the followers as stakeholders?
So followers as in like in social media.
Yeah.
And I think that's a tough one because we don't really understand that. We don't interact with them. And I think from a social media perspective, anybody who's in social media can chime in, right? I think engagement is important there. We don't know what they're doing. They are following us, right? Communication is very important. So keep communicating to them, right? Because as I said, these are probably, if I put those people, they're more in the monkey. They're very interested, not a lot of power, but if they get together in a band, they can kill you, right? The feedback that you get on social media can really kill you. So what you need to think about is communication strategy. How often do we communicate? What do we do, right? How often a week in social media we do? Okay? But the other part is engage them because we want to understand them. 2-3 questions, understand what they want to do, right? What would you like to see, and stuff. Get the feedback. I think the two-way communication is important. When we talk about communication, a lot of times we just one way. We tell them, oh, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. But we never get back from them, right? Okay? So it's another piece of work you have to do. That's why now you have so many social media strategies and people like that who are frequently doing that work only, right? Because you have to manage that crowd, right? That's a stakeholder strategy in itself. Okay? So engage them, ask questions, right? Ask questions, ask for opinions, see through the feedback, see what people are saying, and then use the data and try to figure out, right? Are a lot of people saying this? What do I do? Are there actions like what Chuck said? Strategy. I need to formulate my strategy based on the feedback. Okay? So the two-way feedback is key.
So basically, the key point on stakeholder management is really whether can you engage the other party.
Yes.
If you, I'm just trying to simplify it, right? Because the stakeholders are all changing, right?
Yes.
Right. So the key point would be if I could engage, right, and it actually gives me benefit, right? It will probably be a stakeholder, right? Is it correct? Or what would be the, if if I engage them, right,
Yeah.
what would be the outcome, of the engagement for me to classify the person as a stakeholder? Because it's like, I'm a friend, right? I really don't care too much, but I do engage you, right? But I'm probably not a stakeholder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, if stakeholder definition for me is that everybody's a stakeholder. Everybody around you, it affects your business. The 5 things I said: impact, affected, everything. But the guy is totally out. He's not impacted, affected, nothing. That's not your stakeholder. But the five points I put up there. So I agree with your point. And one of the things in stakeholder, I said, this is not a static document. It's not static. Okay. Over a 3-year project, you can see my stakeholder management changes totally. The people who were there in the beginning disappeared at the end. I don't have to worry about them anymore. So which means that you want to spend the time to make sure that you are updating this. So as you said, new stakeholders may come on board. Make sure new stakeholders come on board. Old stakeholders may be retired, right? Because now finance done ready, they can't do anything. The funding is done, they can't do anything. Okay, out, put them out. Okay, if that's the case, right? Otherwise, you have to think about, okay, now all these new people are coming. All of a sudden, you go to Facebook and new set of people are coming in and talking about your product. Like, how do you engage them? So you need to be able to keep this live. It's a live document. Okay?
Actually, recently I went for a workshop and another thing came up was we design a project, an IT project. You think of stakeholders as someone that we can face to face. Like followers, you can't face them, right? So in any IT project, the obvious stakeholder is obviously your guys or hackers are going to hack into the system. So you have to account for that in your design. So if you now treat them as stakeholders, because they're going to impact your work.
Yes, they're going to impact your work.
You cannot engage a hacker at all.
Just imagine hacker, right? Hacker is a stakeholder.
But you know where they come from, right?
Yeah.
But at least you know they exist and they will impact you. How do you mitigate the risks and so on?
Okay.
It's a given stakeholder in some way.
Yeah. So that's why you have to understand. Sometimes we ignore this. Similarly, like the guy who was a snake, I ignored him for the longest time. He gave me so much trouble, right? That I need to pull him in and say, how do I manage this guy? Even though it was a negative thing, right? Just bring him along for meetings, buy him a drink. It was a waste of my time as far as I'm concerned. But if I don't do that, the guy remains unsatisfied. And he gives me trouble.
Right. So in terms of IT projects, you talk about servers, at least you can harden them, put them somewhere, right? But now the next thing is IoT. IoT, you can also think about vendors, because vendors can also impact not just hackers, now your physical code going to vandalize sensor and now you lose the data. So that's the other angle we have to manage. The challenging part of stakeholder. So maybe you need to put it in a lock place.
But I think that's a good point, right? But nowadays your stakeholders can be invisible.
Anybody, you don't know who they are.
Anybody, right? So you cannot discount the fact that there's no I don't have a stakeholder because of the fact that the way technology is moving along, media is moving along, and I think that's a very good point. How do I know? How do I engage those people? It's a different strategy. We have to brainstorm and figure out how you engage them.
Any other questions for Sanjay? It's not here yet.
Who's that?
It says
Okay.
So how did your new boss manage to swing the general manager to your side?
Sorry?
How did he manage to swing to your side?
He never told me actually.
Never told you,
He never told me, but I tried to speculate. A lot of times people have something on each other, favors, right? And I think one of the things is probably, objectively he may have communicated how important it is, right? And because he's at the senior VP level, he could emphasize it. But I think it was relationship.
Yeah.
It was his relationship with him, and probably they need to pull a favor. Hey, do me a favor, right? My boss is on my case, right? I need to do this, and this is going to be good for you. He must have done something. I think he pulled a favor. And we don't know what that is sometimes. So you just have to work with that. So if no questions, if there's any topic, you say around people and all that stuff, the challenges you face, I told Chuck, anytime you need something, I'm willing to come and do. But this is the first time I don't know what you guys need, so I thought stakeholders may be the interesting thing. But if there's anything around people management, teams, building teams, all that stuff that you feel like you benefit from a half-hour, 45-minute session, please let Chuck know, right? Then I can plan for future talks whenever he doesn't have a speaker. I can come and do that for you.
Yeah, we're more organized.
Yeah.
I've been saying that for half a year now.
Okay, question?
Yes.
No, I just want to ask you your opinion about this because I looked at this chart. And this is like you said, it feels like a waste of time having to deal with stakeholders like that. Do you find this to be if you're working with government, that this is something that They don't. They seldom think about stakeholders.
Yeah. A lot of the I've been doing a lot of project management workshops. A lot of times I ask for feedback. Right? Most of the projects that I've come across, they say they don't do this, and they say that this is the problem. Then at the end of the day, I say, what's the most valuable thing to take back? Stakeholder management. They take back two things in projects: is stakeholder management and risk management. These are the two key things they take back, which they tend to neglect. So in government and stuff, yes, they don't do that. But the other question also is that how do you find out? And yes, your government is your stakeholder as well. Regulatory Singapore, we are like that. So they have to be part of the stakeholder. Whether they are, so in a lot of projects I do like healthcare and other stuff, sometimes they put, like say healthcare, they put MOH as a stake. Because regulation becomes a difficult thing, right? So because sometimes regulations, they're tied up, they're tied down, but then they have to work within that regulation. Yeah. But you're right, people think it's a waste of time. But I tell them, look, you don't have to sit down and do this chart and all that stuff. Once you get the thinking in your mind, right? Who are the tigers? Who are this? That's all you have to do. So it's a small project. It's a mental exercise. A bunch of get together and says who's going to support us, right? Who's going to resist us. Right? It's just that kind of a workshop that you need to do, and just list people that is how do we manage. Simply. But if it's a large project, large projects that I've seen, wow, very extensive. In fact, they go down much more granular than this. This is nothing. The 4 box becomes 9 box. 4 box becomes a 9 box, and then all kinds of things they will do. Like different types of strategies and stuff.
I think as an investor, right, it is often a mistake if the investee organization don't manage the investor as a stakeholder, right? Because that actually determines your help they're going to get for a next level investment. So that's actually quite critical. So therefore, stakeholder management actually has a different aspect.
Yeah. And I think the terminology is stakeholder management has been taken because it's very generic. But I think this type of exercise is not just taken, it's in everything. Whether you start a new business, whether you start you implement a new strategy, right? Whether you run a project, whether you this one is very important in change. Right? Nowadays, a lot of organizations are going through change, and it's a big struggle for a lot of organizations to transition, right? To change because the disruptive change is coming. Right? And a lot of companies are just falling behind. And why they're falling behind? Not that they don't have a plan, right? Is that they're not engaging the people. People are resistant, right? And the moment people become resistant, right, and become die-hard resistors, very hard to change. Culture change, right? These areas like culture change management, acquisitions, mergers. These are the tough part. Why some companies just after so many years of merger and still can't get going. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So just be around. We're going to have pizza after this, right? So you can still ask me. Just a really quick one. Actually, there are a lot of things happening in SCS. Like this evening, actually, we are screening a free movie, which is Doctor Strange, right? If you guys check out the website, right? Because there are lots of events out there. Then this Friday, there is a interesting gamification course, right? And in the evening, there is a free session on training in HR for gamification. So it's actually quite an interesting thing. Just go scs.org.sg and check out the events. There are just so many events. I mean, I was just told to highlight 1 or 2 because I'm going to do an introduction this evening at the Doctor Strange, right? So I was told to, tell people that this Saturday there is a business leadership session, right? But as I scroll through it, there's so many things that enterprise architecture, cloud computing, career, skills upgrading, certified software testing. Oh, I mean, I can't. There's so much stuff. So you guys go and check out the website. Pizza is here. Right? So, thank you very much for coming. Right? See you guys next week. Next week I have 2 presentations for a change. The first one would be Kim. Kim Faulkner runs a branding company. So she's one of the most sought after branding persons in town. She started a company called Interbrand, sold it, make millions, and now she's helping other people do funny things. Right? So be here next week. Should be speaking. I also got a bunch of students who I mentor in SMU. They came up with a very interesting app called My Mind. right? So it's MAI, right? So if you're not a Chinese, it's my mind, right? So then I asked him, what is it? They said, oh, it's my mind, buy and sell, right? So literally what it is a C2C, right? A platform, right? But unlike Carousel, right? They actually extend on Carousel and basically complete the payment, plus they actually do dispute resolution. Because the biggest problem they told me, right, that when some person wants to sell the second-hand phone, is that the guy don't turn up, right? Either party, right? And people get very pissed off with that. So there's a whole review, there's a whole dispute resolution. So literally, if you do a down payment, right, and you didn't turn up, because of all these checks, automatically you'll be forfeited. Right? So quite an interesting. There's still a bunch of students really on, right? So they'll be here next week talking about their software. All right, guys, pizza is ready. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for dressing up.